Hello, my name is Inovi Chandler, and today I'll be talking to you about life course theories. So, life course theories is also called developmental theories, and it's where criminologists focus on delinquent and criminal behavior and the end of antisocial behavior, explaining their life course during infancy, childhood, adolescence, young adult, and further wrong. This life course series uses longitudinal data. It stems from developmental psychology, sociology, and biology research. Some of the risk factors may include that children may commit delinquent behavior due to various events that play throughout their life. And then, second, criminal offenders may also desist or abstain just due to certain turning points within their life. So specific life course theories I'll be focusing on today is Interactional Theory by Terence P. Thornberry, and then second, Age-Graded Theory by Robert J. Sampson and John H. Locke. So Interactional Theory by Terence P. Thornberry focuses on how delinquency is reduced by looking at the different stages that influences strong and or weak social bonds with parents and school. An interactional theory during childhood, which is the age under 11, they will become delinquent depending if one lives in a disadvantaged neighborhood, an ineffective parenting, word picked up by Lawrenston, and then poor schooling. They may hang around kids who misbehave, and all it can lead for a child to develop behavioral problems by Thornberry. And especially if individuals with the earliest onset behavior by Lawrenston. So now focusing on interactional theory and drugs. So in middle school and high school, in this theory, between the ages 12 to 16, maybe a time where kids engage in experimenting with delinquent behavior like smoking, alcohol, shoplifting, and also due to weak bonds to parents and school and negative associations may also lead to delinquent behavior during this time. And let's say that you are as a teen, you never broke the law or misbehaved, but now that you're 20 or 21 and decide to experiment, you have a higher chance of just breaking the law than you did as a teen. Due to strong parental bonds. Yes. And then next I'll talk about a movie, Moonlight, and this focuses more on like antisocial behavior. And since it's life course series, I wanted to follow along a character, so you'll probably see this character again. And in a article by Ed Lim, it focuses on the Moonlight focuses on the tears by pervasive structural poverty and racism in our unequal nation. And Chiron, the character here in the red, hardly understands all the harsh realities that are going on, and it's a painful story marked by parental neglect, abuse, and fear, and despair. And it focuses on specifically a story about homophobia and how the struggle for gay children to grow up in the midst of fear. And at this age, he is 8 years old. So I'm just going to play the clip just to kind of show that antisocial behavior. So here you can see that he didn't want to engage with his peers. He kind of started to, but just decided to just be dependent and walk away. Okay, so next is another application of interactional theory, specifically focusing on the Code of Streets by Elijah Anderson, and a focus on the culture within poor communities and neighborhoods. Specifically in the Code of Streets, there are two types of people living, divided into decent and street families. For interactional theory, this represents people who grow up in a disadvantaged neighborhood similar to the Code of Streets, and it can lead to delinquent behavior if school and social bonds aren't strong. So, according to Anderson, decent families are children who focus on school and have parent bonds that are stronger and stricter, and then there's street families where parents are they may love their children but aren't able to cope with the physical and emotional demands of parenthood, and that's what I'll kind of show here. This is Chiron's mom. um, So, Chiron's mom, as you can see, she is subject to the drugs due to the drug war that is kind of going on during this time. This movie is called Moonlight, and it's directed by Barry Jenkins in 2016. And yeah, I'm not sure if I talked about that already, but just wanted to make sure. And then continuing on to Chiron, he doesn't really act in the way that I guess, male or the stereotypical masculinity would represent, specifically in the Code of Streets. And Chiron doesn't live up to that standard, and consequently, he's a part of the out group and antisocial, and that's what you seen at when he was 8 years old. Continuing on, he act, commits a crime, and I'll kind of show what happens here. Just after all of the bullying and the just being really always separated from his other peers during school and outside of school. Whoops.
Right, stay focused.
Okay, moving on to our next subtheory, which is by Robert J. Sampson and John H. Love, is age-graded theory. And this is during adulthood, there may be like certain turning points that individuals will just basically desist from crime due to like marriage, employment, and military service. This includes the bond and quality of parenting and peer influences. So the marriage effect is a part of age-graded theory, and marriage and parenthood will likely inhibit criminalities. The idea, one who is married from criminal past will have a less protective effect, but marriage is stronger effect if one is African American, Latino, or than a white man, of course. And then if one is married to someone with lower criminality, may be a better protective effect. Yeah, indices from crime. So the application in this specifically marriage, employment, and family. So if you basically have a family, for some delinquents, that motivates a turning point to desist from crime, depending on their individual values. And the reason for choosing to desist from crime is called side bets by Becker in 1960. Men who invested their resources in a marriage or a job, such as risking investment, may became non-negotiable. So yeah, so and if they don't, then no purposeful identity change. This is conceptualized as desistance by default. So yeah, if there's just no change in identity, um, yeah. Okay, in just a more elaborate application of age-graded theory for careers, employment in school, people who end up taking, like legal jobs, is a turning point in their time to desist from delinquency. For example, individuals who decide to join the army are less susceptible to become or continue delinquent behavior. And this data was collected during the World War II era by Barkin. Kind of circling back to the Code of the Streets, Elijah Anderson tells us, and back to this movie Moonlight, that to be street is to buy into some of the worst behaviors in stereotypical ghetto street. So Chiron, after the fight, he was incarcerated, and afterwards, when he got out, he joined the gang, and not only is a part of the gang, but he also took over the drug. He also is the drug lord. And growing up, his father figure was also a drug lord. His name was Juan. So he's kind of following into that and letting his social environment shape him, and yeah, just shaping for the worst. And this can be seen as desistance by default. He didn't also complete high school, therefore employment is also hard to find. In addition to selling drugs, it's just a way to make living. And Anderson people often feel like they have to do everything on their own. And lastly, about Chiron isn't married. Chiron is single and he never got to marry his lover, which in this case would be Kevin. Gonna kind of move. So yeah, that is Chiron, who he is now. Continue on to the critique and advantage and disadvantages. So into Terence P. Thornberry Interactional Theory, the advantage is understanding what happened to bonds that are weakened in core values such as parents, schools, and peers, including long-term effect in the variation of age and gender and criminal propensity. The disadvantage doesn't fully cover the transition throughout adolescence and is missing the interracial relations and linked to development. And then for explaining why a child engages in delinquent behavior and activity is because they aren't close with their parents.